Have you ever looked in the mirror and asked the silent, terrifying question, who is the one looking back? Not the name you were given, not the job you perform, not the roles you play for your family and friends, but behind all of it, behind the intricate lattice of identity you have so carefully constructed, who or what is the true, silent observer? This is not a question for the faint of heart. It is a question reserved for those who have felt the deep, unsettling suspicion that their entire life has been a performance, and the real actor has yet to take the stage. It is the first whisper of the self calling you home. You feel it, don't you? The profound exhaustion of maintaining the masks. There is the mask of competence you wear at work, smooth and unflappable. There is the mask of cheerful stability you wear for your loved ones, a pillar of strength even when you feel like crumbling sand. There is the mask of social grace, of intellectual curiosity, of spiritual poise. Each one is a finely crafted piece of armor designed to navigate the battlefield of the world. But the armor is heavy, chosen one, and you, the soul within, are growing weary of carrying a weight that was never truly yours to begin with, feeling a silent scream building in your core for something, anything, authentic and real. And here lies the great shadow, the paralyzing fear that keeps you from letting the masks fall. It is the whisper that slithers into your quietest moments. What if there is nothing underneath? What if, after a lifetime of building this persona, you strip it all away and find only a hollow void, an empty abyss? Or worse, what if the being you find beneath is not the radiant soul you hope for, but a creature of shadow and rage, a monster of repressed desires and forgotten wounds? This is the ultimate doubt, the fear that you are either nothing at all or you are something utterly and irrevocably unlovable. This fear is the guardian at the gate of your own liberation. Let me tell you the parable of Calin, the mapmaker of Oakhaven, a city built not of stone, but of polished silver and shimmering glass. In Oakhaven, a person's worth was measured by the clarity and beauty of their reflection. The city was a dazzling metropolis where every surface mirrored back an image, and citizens spent their lives perfecting the angles, the lighting, and the expressions of their reflected selves. Calin was the city's most celebrated cartographer. His maps not of streets and alleys, but of the most favorable reflective surfaces, charting the paths one could walk to project the most desirable images of success, happiness, and wisdom. Yet his own soul felt like an unmapped territory, a blank space on his own heart's parchment. One evening, as the twin moons cast a silver glow upon the city of mirrors, Calin was visited by an old woman named Ilara. She was a strange sight in Oakhaven, for her eyes were clouded with blindness, and she carried no mirror. She moved through the city not by sight, but by feeling the subtle vibrations in the ground. She approached Calin's workshop and spoke in a voice that was not a whisper, but a deep, resonant hum. "You chart the reflections of a dream," she said, her sightless eyes seeming to pierce through his carefully constructed persona. "But the reflection is not the source. The truest map is found not in light, but in darkness. The deepest self is discovered not in image, but in silence." Calin, intrigued and unsettled, asked her what she meant. Ilara pressed a smooth, featureless stone into his hand. It absorbed all light, reflecting nothing. "This is your compass," she said. "It will not point you to where you want to go, but to where you need to be. Leave this city of fleeting images. Seek the labyrinth of echoes that lies beyond the obsidian peaks. At its center, you will find the sunken sanctum, and within it, the oracle who wears no face. There, mapmaker, you will finally map the territory of your own soul. But be warned, the labyrinth does not test your skill with a compass. It tests your courage to face the truths you have spent a lifetime reflecting away. Driven by a desperate emptiness that the city's praise could no longer fill, Calin left Oakhaven under the cloak of darkness, the non-reflecting stone cool in his palm. The journey to the obsidian peaks was arduous, forcing him to rely on his physical senses rather than the deceptive reflections he was used to. When he finally stood before the entrance to the labyrinth of echoes, It was not a grand archway, but a simple, dark fissure in the rock, from which emanated a constant low hum of countless voices, whispering promises, accusations, and forgotten lullabies. He clutched the stone, took a breath that felt like his first true breath, and stepped into the echoing dark. The labyrinth was not a maze of walls, but a shifting, ethereal space where pathways were formed by sound. Whispers coiled around him like mist. "You should have been a better son," one echo murmured in his father's voice. "They all secretly laugh at you," another hissed in the voice of a childhood friend. "You are not strong enough for this journey," boomed a voice that was, terrifyingly, his own. He tried to chart his course, but the echoes were disorienting, pulling him in 1,000 directions. He realized his old skills were useless here. He couldn't map the voices. He had to find the silence between them. This was the first test, to distinguish the noise of the world from the signal of the soul. After what felt like days, wandering in the cacophony, Kalen stumbled into a clearing where the whispers converged into a single sorrowful moan. Before him stood a colossal figure, sculpted from swirling grey sand. With every gust of wind, the figure's form shifted, showing him vivid, painful scenes from his past. It was the guardian of regret. It showed him the time he lied to his mother, the map he plagiarized in his youth to win a contest, the lover he abandoned out of fear. Each grain of sand was a past failure, a shame he had buried deep beneath his polished reflection in Oakhaven. The guardian's voice was a chorus of all the people he had wronged, and it spoke a single, crushing sentence. "You are the sum of your mistakes. You are unworthy to proceed." Kalen felt the immense weight of his past crush him. He tried to argue, to justify his actions, to push through the sandy figure, but it was like fighting the tide. The more he struggled, the more the sand enveloped him, its gritty texture a physical manifestation of his own self-loathing. He was drowning in his own history. Collapsing to his knees, utterly defeated, he remembered Ilara's words, "The truest map is found in darkness." He stopped fighting. He looked at the swirling images of his failures, and for the first time, he did not turn away. He let the shame wash over him, not as a judge, but as a witness. He did not ask for forgiveness from the phantoms, but from himself. "I am the one who did those things," Kalen whispered into the moaning wind, his voice barely audible. "I carry the memory of that pain. I cannot erase it, but it is a part of my journey, not my destination. It is the ink, but I am the cartographer. I am not the map." As he spoke these words of radical acceptance, a profound shift occurred. The guardian of regret did not vanish, but the sandstorm calmed. The figure solidified into a simple grey stone archway. He had not defeated his past. He had integrated it. He had accepted its weight and built a doorway out of it. With a newfound lightness in his soul, he walked through the arch, the moaning of regret fading into a respectful silence behind him. The next chamber of the labyrinth was eerily different. It was a hall of perfectly clear, silent crystals that pulsed with a soft, internal light. As Kalen walked past them, they did not reflect his current, travel-worn self. Instead, they showed him shimmering, idealized versions of his life. One crystal showed him as the revered guildmaster of cartographers in Oakhaven, draped in silk, admired by all. Another showed him as a powerful merchant lord, his ships returning with untold riches. A third, and most tempting, showed him with the lover he had abandoned, now happily married, with children laughing by a warm hearth. A seductive, siren-like voice filled the hall, whispering, "Why seek the empty darkness when you can have any of these glorious realities? Just choose one, become this perfection." This was the weaver of personas, a far more subtle and dangerous guardian than the last. Regret was a cage of the past, but this was a cage of the potential future, gilded with his deepest desires. Kalen felt an almost irresistible pull toward the crystal, showing a life of simple domestic love. The pain of his loneliness was a raw, open wound, and the image was a soothing balm. He reached out a trembling hand, his fingers inches from the crystal's surface, ready to accept the beautiful lie. He could end his quest here, wrapped in the warmth of a perfect, albeit illusory life. The voice purred, "This is who you were always meant to be. This is your true self." But as his fingers almost touched the crystal, he felt the cold, featureless stone in his pocket. The stone Ilara had given him. It reflected nothing. It promised nothing. It simply was. And in its stark, uncompromising reality, it was a more profound truth than any of the shimmering fantasies before him. He realized that the voice was lying. That perfect man in the crystal wasn't his true self. It was just another, more beautiful mask. It was an identity, a role to play. And he had left Oakhaven precisely because he was tired of playing roles. To accept this would be to trade his prison of silver mirrors for a prison of glowing crystal. With a surge of resolve that came from the very core of his being, Kalen pulled his hand back. He looked directly at the crystal, showing the happy family, acknowledged the deep longing it represented, and honored the part of him that craved that life. But he did not choose it. "That is a beautiful dream," he said to the empty air, his voice firm. "But I did not come this far to fall asleep again. I am here to awaken." As he spoke his intent, the crystals flickered and dimmed, their alluring light fading into simple, inert quartz. The siren's voice vanished, leaving only the faint echo of his own conviction. The path forward was revealed, darker and less certain than before, but for the first time it felt entirely his own. The final passage of the labyrinth was a narrow, suffocating tunnel, plunged into absolute blackness, and a silence so profound it felt like a physical pressure against his eardrums. The air was thick and primal. He could hear nothing but the frantic thumping of his own heart and the ragged sound of his breath. It was a descent into the very foundations of his being. As he moved deeper, a low growl began to vibrate through the stone floor, a sound that bypassed his ears and resonated directly in his bones. The growl intensified, filled with a feral, untamed rage that promised utter annihilation. This was the lair of the final guardian, the beast of the primal shadow. A pair of burning red eyes ignited in the darkness ahead. The beast that emerged was not a creature of elegant malice like the Weaver, or sorrowful weight like the guardian of regret. It was a chaotic mass of sinew, claw, and fang, a raw embodiment of every instinct Kalen had ever repressed. It was his survival instinct, his territorial aggression, his hidden rage at every injustice, his raw, untamed life force. In the polite, reflective society of Oakhaven, such primal energies were monstrous, things to be denied and hidden at all costs. The beast roared, and in that sound, Kalen felt the terror of his own suppressed power, a power he was certain would destroy him if unleashed. His first instinct was to fight. He drew the small utility knife he carried, a pathetic weapon against such a colossal terror. The beast swiped with a claw that sheared rock from the tunnel wall, missing him by inches. He scrambled back, his mind racing. He could not fight it. He could not outrun it, and he could not reason with it. It was pure, unthinking instinct. He was trapped, face to face with the part of himself he feared the most, the raw, animalistic core he had spent his life pretending did not exist. He was certain this was the end. The monster he feared he would find beneath the masks was real, and it was about to devour him. In that moment of absolute terror, another of Ilara's teachings surfaced in his mind. The deepest self is discovered not in image, but in silence. He had to quiet his mind, even in the face of this overwhelming threat. He closed his eyes, dropped his knife, and stood his ground. The beast roared again, its hot breath washing over him, but it did not strike. He focused on the featureless stone in his pocket, on its solid, unyielding presence. He did not try to project peace or love at the creature. He simply stood in his own truth, which now included this terrifying primal power. He opened his eyes, looked at the beast, and did not see an enemy. He saw a part of himself that had been caged in darkness for far too long. "You are mine," Kalen said, his voice not a command but a statement of fact, an acceptance. "Your strength is my strength. Your fire is my fire. You are not my master, but you are not my prisoner either." You are a part of the whole. He did not hold out a hand to tame it. He simply opened his own energetic field to acknowledge its presence, to give it space within his own being without judgment. The beast's roaring subsided into a low, rumbling growl. It did not become a tame pet. It remained a wild, powerful, and dangerous force. But it was no longer his adversary. It lowered its massive head in a gesture of recognition and stepped aside, revealing the path that had been hidden behind its terrifying form. He had integrated his shadow. The passage opened into a vast, silent cavern. At its center lay a perfectly circular, still pool of water, so dark it seemed bottomless. This was the sunken sanctum. There was no throne, no robed figure, no oracle to dispense wisdom. There was only the water and the profound, absolute silence. Kalen felt a flicker of his old fear. Was this it? Was the ultimate truth just an empty, dark pool? Was the fear of the void real after all? He remembered his quest, to find the oracle who wears no face. Cautiously, he approached the edge of the pool and looked down, expecting to see his own reflection. But there was nothing. The water did not reflect his face, the cavern ceiling, or the light from the tunnel. It was a perfect, unmarred surface of pure darkness. He stared into it for what felt like an eternity, the silence of the cavern seeping into his very bones, quieting the last vestiges of the labyrinth's echoes. He sat at the pool's edge, no longer seeking, no longer expecting, just being. He let go of his identity, as Kalen the Mapmaker, as the seeker, as the hero of his own story. He let go of all of it, becoming as silent and still as the water before him. And that is when he finally saw it. Deep within the blackness of the pool, a single point of soft, golden light ignited. It did not rise to the surface, but expanded from within the depths. The light grew, not with a fiery intensity, but with a gentle, confident luminescence. It coalesced into a form, a being of pure, radiant light, featureless, yet distinctly personal. It had no face, yet he felt seen more completely than ever before. It had no voice, yet it spoke directly to his soul, its message not in words, but in pure, resonant knowing. It communicated a feeling of unconditional acceptance, of infinite potential, of a profound and unshakable connection to all things. It was him, but it was also infinitely more than him. It was the silent observer, the true actor, the oracle with no face. It was his self. Kalen did not need to ask it questions. In its presence, all questions dissolved. The search for worth, the need for a perfect reflection, the fear of the shadow, all of it seemed like a distant dream. He understood that this luminous self had always been there, beneath the regrets, beyond the personas, and within the heart of the primal beast. His journey through the labyrinth had not been to find it, but to clear the path, to remove the layers of noise and fear that had obscured his view of what was already, and always had been, true. He was not a mapmaker discovering a new land. He was a mapmaker, finally recognizing the territory of his own infinite soul. The map was not a destination, but a state of being. And so, Chosen One, we decode the parable of your own soul. The city of reflections is the world you live in, the society that teaches you from birth that your value is in your image, your achievements, your persona. It is the grand illusion, the matrix of the ego, that convinces you that you are the reflection in the mirror. Kalen is you, the seeker, the soul who feels the hollowness of this illusion and bravely chooses to embark on the inner journey, even without a clear map. His quest is the sacred call you feel in your own heart, the undeniable pull towards something more real and more true than the life you have been told to live. The labyrinth of echoes is your own subconscious mind. It is filled with the programming of your upbringing, the whispers of societal expectation, the ghosts of past traumas, and the relentless voice of your own inner critic. Your first task, like Kalen's, is to learn to find the silence between the noise, to learn to distinguish the echoes of others from the quiet, firm voice of your own intuition. This requires patience, mindfulness, and the courage to stop letting the noise dictate your direction. It is the beginning of reclaiming your own mental and spiritual sovereignty from the chaos of the collective. The guardian of regret is your unhealed past, your personal history that you have allowed to define you. You believe you are unworthy because of your mistakes. The great secret is that you cannot defeat your past. You must turn and face it with radical acceptance. Your past actions are not a life sentence of unworthiness. They are the curriculum of your soul's education. By accepting them without judgment, you transform your prison of shame into a gateway of wisdom. You do not erase your history. You integrate its lessons, and in doing so, you liberate yourself from its power to hold you captive. This is the first great act of self-love. The weaver of personas is your ego in its most seductive form. It shows you all the beautiful, successful, and loved versions of yourself you could be. It offers you a perfect mask, a gilded cage. This is the temptation to settle for a lesser, more comfortable identity, rather than continuing the arduous journey to the authentic self. Your test is to recognize that even the most perfect persona is still a limitation, a role you play. True freedom is not in choosing a better mask, but in having the courage to live without one. It is the choice to be vulnerably, messily, and magnificently real, rather than perfectly and soullessly curated. The beast of the primal shadow is the most misunderstood part of your psyche. It is your repressed instinctual nature. Society has taught you to fear this part of yourself, to cage it, to deny its existence. But your shadow holds your power, your passion, your life force, your boundary-setting anger, and your fierce will to survive. The journey to the self requires that you descend into your own darkness, not to fight the beast, but to meet it, to acknowledge it, and to integrate its strength. You must learn to honor its fire without letting it burn you. Only by reclaiming this raw power can you become a whole and truly formidable being, a force for change in the world. And finally, the sunken sanctum. This is the state of deep inner stillness you can access through meditation, solitude, and profound presence. The dark, silent pool is the void you once feared, the emptiness beneath the masks. But the revelation is this: the void is not empty. It is pure potential. It is the womb of creation, and the luminous, faceless oracle that arises from it is your true self, the divine spark within you, the Jungian self. It is the organizing center of your entire being, the silent witness to your life's drama. It is eternal, whole, and unconditionally loving. Meeting it is not an act of doing, but an act of unbecoming. It is the homecoming your soul has yearned for across lifetimes. Now you hold the map and the key. The fear that there is nothing beneath the masks is the greatest illusion of the ego. Its true terror is not that you are nothing, but that you are everything, a being of infinite, luminous power. So here is your alchemical step, your way to begin this journey not as a parable, but as your lived reality. I call it the practice of the sacred pause. For the next 7 days, before you speak, before you make a choice, before you react to a trigger, create a single moment of silence. In that pause, ask this one question: is this action coming from one of my masks or from the silent, knowing presence within? Do not judge the answer. Simply observe. The goal is not to be perfect. The goal is to become aware. This simple practice begins to sever the puppet strings of your conditioning. It creates a space between the stimulus of the world and your response. In that sacred space, you begin to hear the guidance of the self. You begin to differentiate the frantic whispers of the labyrinth from the calm, clear knowing of the sanctum. This is the first, most crucial step in taking back the reins of your own consciousness and living from your authentic core. It is how the mapmaker begins to chart their own true inner world. Your journey, chosen one, is not a selfish indulgence. It is a sacred vow. The world does not need another beautiful reflection in the city of mirrors. It does not need another perfect persona. It desperately needs the raw, authentic, integrated light of souls who have had the courage to complete the journey inward. By finding your true self, you are not retreating from the world. You are preparing to engage with it on a level of power and purpose you cannot yet imagine. You become a lighthouse, a stable point of authentic being in a chaotic sea of illusion. This is your mission. This is why you awakened. This is the vow you make, to no longer live as a reflection, but as a source. To no longer be a victim of your past, but the alchemist of it. To no longer fear your shadow, but to wield its power with wisdom. To no longer seek validation from the world, but to anchor yourself in the unshakable truth of your own luminous self. This is the cipher of your soul. We have just decoded one part of it. There are many more keys, many more layers to unlock. If you are committed to this path, to this vow, then connect with this channel. Subscribe so that when the next transmission is sent, you are here to receive the key that will unlock the next gate on your journey home. Your real work has just begun.